welcome to Novel Feelings, where two psychologists take a deep dive into your favorite books. I'm Priscilla.
And I'm Elise, and today we're celebrating our 50th episode, excluding trailers and announcements.
I wooed too quickly.
Woo! I will insert some applause here.
Yeah.
Thank you, editing Elise. 50 episodes. That's pretty cool.
Yes. This is going to be a quick celebration and retrospective of what we've achieved in 4 years and 50 episodes.
Yeah. So, flashback time, I guess, for those that have not been with us from the start, which is probably going to be most listeners, to be honest. So if you have been with us from the start, we love you and you're amazing. Thank you. But before we go into a bit of a retrospective and celebration, we have one announcement to make, which is really exciting, which is that we are going to have an online community starting up after this episode. So we have created a Facebook group. We know Facebook is not the coolest platform, but we also know a lot of our audience probably don't have Discord and Twitch accounts or want to join up on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee or all those other platforms. So hopefully most of you have an old Facebook account, even if it's just collecting dust. But we are basically wanting to bring a place together for some of our engaged or less engaged followers and community members to have a bit of a group chat going to talk about some of the books that we're covering on the podcast, books that you're reading in general, things that you want to talk about, recommend to others, Q&As with us, to places where we can post content aside from just our regular like Instagram feeds. So we wanted to have a bit of a chat.
Yeah, and it will be free to join. If you're listening to this episode, the group will be public and you can actually look us up. It will be called Novel Feelings Community. So if you put that in the search bar of Facebook.
Yep, we'll link to it
that
below
should be,
as well, to facebook.com/groups/Novel Feelings. Hopefully you'll be able to find it with those. Just let us know if you have any trouble getting there.
Yes, so please join us if you're keen.
Okay. So let's have a little bit of a journey through the history of Novel Feelings. We'll keep this brief. Flashback to 2020.
Really? The worst kind of flashback.
No one wants to flashback to 2020.
Yeah.
COVID lockdown. I'm starting my PhD. I am roping in Priscilla to creating a podcast.
Yes.
Because I don't know enough about podcasts, and part of my PhD is focused on podcast creation. And I'm like, Priscilla, we talk about books and mental health a lot. Do you want to maybe start a podcast with me? And you don't know what you're signing yourself up to, but you say yes, and I'm so grateful.
Well, I'm just here for the ride. And then we pick 6 diverse books that include mental health representations, including both popular and less well-known books and authors located in Australia, internationally. We bought mics.
We were making do with what we had before we got our good high quality golden microphones, but we got our equipment. I taught myself how to use Adobe Audition, which is way more complicated than it needed to be. We create some graphics, we brainstorm names. Mind Readers was a great option, but sadly was taken. Ended up going with Novel Feelings. Podcast was born. So in that first time point, we had 6 review episodes. It was just the 2 of us, and a lot more has happened since then. So we've had 3 seasons of book reviews. We started doing interviews back in, I think, 2021. We had our very first author interview, and then they gradually built up over time. We started building relationships with publishers as well, which was really cool. Now we get sent books, which never happened.
Very exciting still.
Sometimes we get sent too many books. I mean, please don't stop, publishers.
Yes,
but,
don't.
Sometimes we bite off a little bit more we can chew with our capacity to review them in a timely fashion. But we do our best for 2 people that work full-time hours.
Yes, absolutely. And, we bite more than we can chew because we're overly excited about all these books and authors and opportunities. At the end of season 2, which was in October 2021, we had a bit of a break because we were very, very busy. We went on hiatus after the end of season 2, but we were still writing content on Instagram, on our blog, which we're still doing. It's still I think we both have our roots in writing.
Mm,
So writing our thoughts is still something that we both enjoy.
absolutely. And then 2023, we had our season 3 release. We switched up our format a bit, tried to have more of a book club emphasis rather than just our opinions about books. Started spreading out our reviews over the year to give people a bit of a chance to catch up. We stopped focusing so exclusively on books with mental health representation and more, I suppose, more broadly psychological themes. So we're not, we wanted to make sure that we're not limiting ourselves too much that way. And then we got tired again in 2024, took a bit of a break, but we've still been doing things, where we can. We've still been doing author interviews and written reviews, and we're looking forward to what 2025 brings as well. So that's a little bit of a history of Novel Feelings.
Shall we talk about some trends that we've noticed about ourselves as readers?
Let's do it. So I spent some time actually collating all of the ratings that we've done in our past episodes and putting together a bit of a spreadsheet because, as you know, I'm a researcher, I'm a bit of a data nerd. So not that this is particularly complicated data analysis, but still. Key things to note. You rate more extreme than I do.
Yes, I clearly... What's that Jane Austen quote? I don't love in half or something. I love it or I hate it, apparently.
So it's not that much more extreme than me, but, I've never given a book 1 star in our podcast, and you have, and you also have more of a tendency to give 5 stars based on, emotional connection.
That's right.
To the books, whereas I'm like, this was really good, but here's this little criticism that brings it down by 0.5 or whatever. So I kind of rate more in the middle than you do on average.
Very interesting.
But our overall average rating is a 3.9 out of 5. So clearly we still seem to pick books that we like.
Well, considering how much work we have to put in, reading the book and talking about it, I think we subconsciously just steer away from books that are too far out of our comfort zones.
Yeah, like we still enjoy having a critical discussion. But I think if we were picking books that we knew we weren't going to like, well, for a start, it wouldn't be very fun for us, but I also don't think it's very on brand for us to just be doing mean-spirited reviews. One thing we've always tried to do is, even when we are more critical of a book, we talk about why we're critical, and it's not just about like attacking the author or, their writing or something like that. Like we try to sort of go beyond just like this is a terrible book, and if you like it, you're a terrible person sort of reviews, which have never been my favorite anyway, even if they might get a lot of clicks.
Yeah, I know. I think we will continue to pick books that we think we will like. And if you want someone mean, this is not the podcast for you.
Absolutely not. But we have some, I suppose, awards to give out as well. Yeah. Also some superlatives. So best book that we covered based on our ratings. So first of all, I will give a shout out to our runners up, which was I'm Glad My Mum Died and Tiger Daughter, which we gave an average rating of 4.75 out of 5 to each of those. So clearly we loved those.
Absolutely, we did. But the best book that we've covered just based on our 5-star ratings is A Monster Calls, which we covered in season 2, episode 8. We both gave it a 5-star.
I think our guest on that episode gave it 5 stars as well, Matt Larkin. So
triple 5 stars.
Triple 5 stars. I think we just couldn't fault it, if anything. We've had both that emotional connection and thought the story was, pretty much as good as it could be for what it was. So 5 stars all around for that one.
Yes. What about the worst book that we've covered?
Well, again, we don't tend to cover a lot of books that we dislike. So I will give dishonorable mentions to 2, which we rated quite low, which was Fight Club and 13 Reasons Why. We gave those an average rating of 2.5 out of 5. To be fair, we picked both of those books because we knew we would have a critical discussion about them. So we weren't going in blind to them. We knew that there were going to be some fundamental issues, I suppose, with some of the topics that were covered in those books that we wanted to go into. So we knew it was going to be a mixed review at best. But the one we rated worst was My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which was season 3, episode 5, I believe. I rated it 2 out of 5. You gave it a 1.
I would have stopped reading it if I didn't have to read it for the podcast. I guess I have to like disclaim this and say it's like worse based on my personal taste. Like it just wasn't for me. Yeah.
I know lots of people who love this book, and
yeah.
I don't know if we need to say this, but we will. If we don't like the same book as you, it doesn't mean we dislike you as a person.
Yes.
There's just something
not
about
a personal
preference. Yeah.
This is not a judgment on your personality.
No. What is it? No. But what if it is? We won't go into why we disliked it in this episode, but yeah, we didn't know we were going to dislike it before we read it. We picked it because we knew that there'd be some interesting representations about, I suppose, like prescription drug misuse was the biggest one that's really covered. But I didn't know about some of the other stuff that would come up, but it's just not a book for us.
I didn't know anything when I went in. I blame our other book club. Just like, we're already reading it for that anyway.
We might as well. And not our favorite. So again, you might love it. We did not.
Yes.
And then we have a couple of awards which are a little bit more subjective, I suppose.
Yes.
One of them is, one of them isn't really. Our favorite review.
Yes. Well, I guess this is a favorite, not so much because of the book, but more because of our discussion, I guess. I particularly enjoyed our episode on 13 Reasons Why, simply because that is a book that has changed in terms of its meaning for me from when I first read it. And I think getting to unpack it with you was really interesting for me. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I think that was my favorite too. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But I will also say, I think another one of my favorite episodes was also I'm Glad My Mum Died. I think we just had a really interesting conversation in that one. It was only the two of us, and it was the first one we recorded after quite a long break because we didn't record anything for 2022 aside from a couple of author interviews. That was our first episode of season 3 in 2023, and I think it was just such a great one to jump back in on because it was a book that we both really liked and just so much to talk about. And I don't know what else to say. It was great.
It was a good discussion.
It was a good discussion for sure. And our final award goes to our most popular written piece of content for our blog. For those who may not be aware, we do have a blog up on novelfeelings.com where we do written reviews, but also the occasional just like essay style piece, I suppose. But your review of Sally Hepworth's The Good Sister continues to be our most accessed piece of content. And I don't fully know why, but I suspect it appears quite high on Google when people search for reviews of that book. So you just keep getting a lot of clicks.
I'm flattered, but I'm also scared. Because it's not, I don't think it was a mean review. Like, I think it was I'd like to think about it as a thoughtful review because I did like the book, but there was a component of it that bothered me.
Yeah. And again, we don't really do mean-spirited reviews. No. It was more like a sort of reflection on like a book can be really good in terms of it being engaging and interesting and keeps you hooked. But sometimes there are elements of representation in particular that do bother us. And I think we can talk about that. About it saying like this is a bad book.
No, or in the case of The Good Sister, it's like it does one representation really well and another not so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's another Sally Hepworth book that I read recently, The Soulmate, which I would really love to talk about at some point too. Yes. So maybe that can be a follow-up review.
Yes, absolutely.
I will give a shout out to our second most popular piece of content as well, which is my review of One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus, which talks about I don't know how much of a spoiler it is to say this, but I'll keep it vague. I suppose the death of a main character and why the framing of that really bothers me. If you haven't it is a spoiler review though. Both of those are spoiler reviews. So do read with caution if you are interested in those. But yeah, 2 pieces of content which didn't make it to the podcast are actually our most popular pieces of written content for the blog, which is interesting. So yeah, if you are curious about what else we do other than audio episodes, go and check those out.
We do have some favorite moments from our podcasting career to talk about.
Absolutely.
The first exciting moment was finding out that Wei Chim, the first author we ever had on the podcast, was going to be an Australian survivor. We're just like, what? And that is how we became Survivor viewers.
Yes. I'd never watched Survivor before her season. Had you?
No.
I'd seen a couple of episodes here and there, but I hadn't been a proper watcher of it. And so finding out that someone we knew at least a little bit was going to be on the show, that really motivated us to watch it. And now we're just regular Survivor watchers whenever the season comes around. Yeah. But also shout out to Wei for doing so good on that season.
Yeah.
I can't remember where she placed, and I won't spoil it for anyone who does catch up on episodes of Survivor, but she did really well. So well done, Wei.
Yes, absolutely. And then I did enjoy having my fangirl moment when we got to interview Nina Kenwood for the first time.
so for background, because we have some relationships with a couple of publishers, particularly Australian publishers, sometimes or quite often we do get interview requests directly from publishers. So we hadn't approached the publisher or approached Nina for this episode. But when that came through, I messaged you and you responded like in all caps, like, oh my God, yes, we have to do it.
Yes.
So we've been really lucky that we've been able to interview Nina twice on the podcast now as well. So hopefully that means she had a positive enough time to want to come back to promote her new book. So check out both of those episodes if you haven't already.
And then, of course, there was the first time that we shot our shot.
We did reach out to the publishers to ask if Graham Simsian would be interested to come on the podcast to talk about the legacy of the Rosie Project series. And thankfully, he was keen to come on the podcast. That led to a great ongoing relationship with Text Publishing, who are some of our biggest supporters. Thank you to Text and the publicists there. You guys are legends.
Yeah, I honestly still feel like the author interviews can be sort of like a pinch me moment sometimes. I'm like, oh, wow, like, you want to talk to us? Okay, But also, I think that's part of the podcast that I enjoy. Maybe not the most, but one of the most rewarding parts of this is being able to talk to authors about their creative thinking and processes and things like that.
Absolutely. I just wish we had more capacity sometimes to take on some more of those requests. Yes, it does. It does require quite a bit of work to plan for those author interviews, but they're great when we can do them.
Yes, absolutely. And then, of course, there was our first in-person recording at Melbourne Uni's fancy podcasting studio.
That was a fun moment. I don't know why. Well, we have done it once since then, but we were in a different recording setup and it ended up being terrible sound quality.
Yeah.
So I think if we were to do it again, we'd have to find the old setup because that worked really well. It was like different equipment, a different room. It was not properly soundproof. There was like a construction happening outside. There was so much background noise. And I did the best I could with editing for someone who's not a professional podcast editor. But the first time we did it in that pod situation was great. And we should probably do that again at some point.
Yes, apart from, we will be prepared for it next time for the fact that it was really hot in that pod.
This little like insulated soundproof pod. And I think it was winter or a cold time when we were recording. So we kind of came in with all of our layers. And then as the recording session went on, we just got hotter and hotter and hotter.
Yes, absolutely. But we've had a good run. I don't know what we expected when we first started, but I
didn't think we'd still be going this far down the track, but what keeps us going, like, we really enjoy this. It is hard work, as we've spoken about, particularly on our Instagram recently. Like, we don't get paid for this. It's just a labor of love. It's something we volunteer our time to do. But I really love spending time with you and talking about the books that we enjoy, meeting authors, meeting other members of the book community and podcasting communities. it's just really fun to sort of see where this has gone, and hopefully we'll continue to go live to the public for a little bit longer as well. So really grateful to everybody who's been along the way and has supported the show in any capacity over the last 4 years.
Yes, thank you so much. I think this isn't exactly direct to the podcast, but every time someone says to me in real life, "Oh, I've listened to your episode," or "How's the podcast going?" It's exciting. Yes, my husband's love language is telling everyone we know that I have a podcast. So
thank you, Connor, for ongoing promotion.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun. Like, yeah, it's fun how this then opens up the conversations, talking to people about books as well.
So if you are interested in having conversations with us or with other members of the Novel Feelings community, please do join that Facebook group that we mentioned at the start of the show. Search for Novel Feelings community on Facebook or look for the link that will be in the show notes. But in any case, I think that wraps us up for today.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. If you like us, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The best places to find us online at the moment are Instagram and YouTube at novel_feelings, the Storygraph, and Facebook, as we've mentioned before. Search for Novel Feelings Community. If we have entertained you or taught you something, please consider buying us a coffee to show your thanks. Link in the show notes. All proceeds go towards making the show stronger and more sustainable. Thank you so much.
Thanks. See ya.
Bye. Our podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri Land, which is home to both of us in Naarm, Melbourne.
We also acknowledge the role of storytelling in First Nations communities.
Always was,
always will be
Aboriginal Land.